Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jim on the Air. I'm Jim Suriani, your host. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Jim on the Air. And this time around, we are dedicating the show to the Reemerge Dance Festival, which is being presented by Center Stage Theater at Center Stage. And the whole purpose of the Reemerge Dance Festival is to celebrate the fact that we're starting to reopen theaters all across the land as the pandemic starts to ease up a little bit. More and more folks are getting the vaccine, and more and more people are able to go out and do stuff, go to the theater, go to a restaurant, go see a movie, sporting events. And so, as a part of a way to celebrate the fact that everything is reopening, Center Stage has created this dance festival, Re-Emerge Dance Festival, and it will take place on June 17th through the 20th, June 17th through the 20th, and at Center Stage. And for ticket information, you can go to the Center Stage website, centerstagetheater.org. Again, that's centerstagetheater.org, and click over there, and you can get your tickets reserved and do that online. Also, you can click on the blog tab, and on the blog for Center Stage is all the information, all the in-depth information about the festival, about each of the performers and various studios that are performing. And you can learn more in depth on the blog there at Center Stage. And again, it's centerstagetheater.org. And my guest for today is Alexandra King. And Alexandra is a nationally recognized Middle Eastern dancer and has been one of Santa Barbara's top belly dancers since 1981. And she was the house dancer at the
The Plaka.
Plaka, that's right. I was looking at that wrong. Plaka restaurant for 12 years, co-founded the UCSB Middle East Ensemble, and has won a number of awards for her work. And you can learn more about Alexandra at her website, alexandraking.com. That's ALEXANDRA King.com, in case you're grabbing your pen there. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Alexandra to our show. Alexandra, welcome to Jim on the Air. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, tell me a little bit about your path as an artist. What led you to dance eventually? How did that start for you?
So I was born in New York City, raised in the Virgin Islands. So I am a West Indian woman.
Nice.
And my family were musicians and dance and not dancers, actors, theater, film for three generations on both sides. So my childhood home was both insane because everybody was a performer. And so it was a theater in our home. I always tell people my mom read us Shakespeare to put us to sleep at night. And of course, there are carnivals and wonderful things that happened, culturally when I was growing up. It was a multicultural environment. And that led me to adore dance. But I was the black sheep because everybody else was a musician and an actor. And they thought I was crazy. Why would anybody want to be a dancer? There's no money in it.
Oh,
But I fell in love with it, and that was that. And I was en route to become a ballerina. When I came to California in my early 20s, I discovered ethnic dance, and that was the end of that. I studied one form of dance after another, became a dance whore, and loved everything and did every form, and eventually joined
fabulous.
Scott Marcus at UCSB and became a Middle Eastern dance instructor while I toured the US and taught, and it was a career.
Nice. So tell us about the tradition of belly dancing. What are its roots? How did it come about?
So there are a lot of myths around it, but basically it originated in India over 5,000 years ago when, the Indian dance began. It was sort of the oldest form of dance. And then gypsies migrated across about 1,000 years ago, across to in Iran and Turkey and North Africa, eventually settling in those places. And every place they went, they assimilated the culture and formed their own version of dance. A lot of it was the basic foundation of what we call belly dance today. Um, Fast forward to the late 19th century, in Turkey, Egypt, and the United States, the world was becoming much smaller. And so there was a lot of entertainment and travel. So if you went to Egypt at the turn of the century, you might go to a tavern and see dancing and music. Same in Turkey and same in this country. The diaspora of Middle Eastern people settling in this country in the early 20th century um, expanded. And by the middle of the 20th century, there were taverns and clubs and restaurants all over the US. It was still a subculture, but it was beginning to blossom. And by the 70s, when I joined that style of dance, there were musicians and dancers in all the major cities who were working professionally. Um, and that's kind of the history of it, the high points and the bullet points of it.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
while it was developing in Egypt and Turkey as a public form of entertainment in the late 19th, early 20th century, it was also developing in this country. It started, the first performance was at the Chicago World's Fair. Little Egypt was there
oh.
with a lot of different musicians and dancers who were brought in for the Middle Eastern Fair, I believe it was called. And so that sort of was the first expose of the dance. And it was, it got its name in North Africa, belly dancing, la danse du ventre, because the French were horrified during the Victorian era to see women with their torsos exposed. Same thing at the Chicago World's Fair. So people say, how did it get that name? Well, not because you're dancing with your belly, but because it was exposed. And so
Oh,
that was considered just, oh,
horrific.
oh yeah. I mean,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
women gyrating around on the stage. Now today, nudity is
Now,
not as bad, right? So I mean, how many modern dances performances have we seen in big cities
uh,
where they're half naked, if not all the way? So
right, right. Or you're watching like what do you call it? When spring break, and you see the kids at the beaches, barely a little tiny piece of fabric that's covering everything. So
yeah.
yeah, it's come a long way. Well, but it's amazing though that it started 5,000 years ago. That's just
Well, we've
incredible.
we researchers have, you know, um, gone back and looked at all the different styles and looked at this and researched the history of each form of dance in from India through Central Asia to the Levant and North Africa, and the styles of dance that cropped up over history really were the roots. If you look at the way that the people danced in those different regions, particularly in Iran, the Qajar dynasty in the late 1800s, 1700s really incubated the dancers and musicians and protected them, gave them places in the palaces to nurture and develop and foster the styles of dance and music that became the classical styles of Iran. And
Okay.
that sort of laid the foundations of belly dance as we know it today, because the dancers and musicians had a 3 century period to grow. And
Yeah.
and then when it hit, the late 19th century opened up the taverns for the public and incoming tourism. Um, it had already really developed into a style of dance that we call baladi or homeland dance in Arabic.
Oh wow, that's amazing. It's such a rich history for this type of dance.
And
Um,
interestingly enough, if I may just say one more
sure.
thing, flamenco is the grandchild of Arabic and
Oh,
Indian dance. If you look at the footwork, the Arabs and the Moors, I mean the Moors and the Jews and the Gypsies that lived in Andalusia um,
mhm.
around the 1492 era were persecuted and told to get out when Ferdinand and Isabella
Oh,
came back and reconquered Spain and said either you leave or you convert. So they hid in caves in
wow.
Sacromonte and in Granada, and they kind of were forced to be together, and that's kind of how flamenco came to be, was the three cultures merging
Oh,
in unison to protect themselves from the conquest of the new king and queen. And
wow.
over the next 3 centuries, that style of dance, flamenco, also developed in caverns and became very sophisticated, as did belly dance. And So you see a lot of similarity in the styles of music and dance. It's because basically flamenco comes, as the grandchild of Arabic, Indian, and Spanish dance.
Wow, what an amazing history.
It
And
is.
and yeah, and now that I think about it, when I've seen flamenco dancing and I've seen belly dancing and such, yeah, you see a lot of similar. That
Lot of
totally
similarity.
that makes sense then.
Ah, you know.
That's great. Yeah, it makes sense that they merged. They were forced to. They had to. They had to stick together. Wow, that's an amazing history. So I'm talking with Alexandra King, and her piece, by the way, will be featured at the Reemerge Dance Festival, and that will be on Friday, June 18th at 7 p.m. You can see her piece on that performance. And if you want to check out the whole festival or one performance or all of them or mix or match, you can certainly do so. And you would just go to the Center Stage website, centerstagetheater.org. That's centerstagetheater.org. And you can check out, you can reserve tickets. You can also check out the blog and learn more in depth information about all the various performers that will be at the festival. Again, centerstagetheater.org. And also, Alexandra's website is alexandraking.com. That's ALEXANDRA King.com to learn more about what she's up to and learn everything that's going on there as well. So, Alexandra, let me ask you then how, as a dancer and as a performer, how was the shutdown and quarantine for you this last year? How did you manage through that whole mess?
Well, like a lot, probably every dancer in the world, I had to switch from real life to Zoom and other platforms. So I did a lot of online, mostly private lessons. My group classes have basically crashed. So I have to restart my school, and that's daunting and frightening. Um, but but at the same time, I survived with private lessons and grants for artists and things. People came forward. I was just astonishing how generous and kind, not just local, but mostly national and international donors were really generous with grants and help financially, in addition to the government, stimulus checks. So I eked by. What's frightening now is we have rampant, um, uh, the, losing my words right now, but we're getting back into the saddle. We're getting back on the saddle, and yet there's no school
Hmm.
left to really work in. So I'm kind of keeping my
Oh,
fingers crossed that this summer things will reemerge for dancers.
right, right. Now, was your studio located somewhere in Santa Barbara, or how did that work?
I don't have a studio, but I
Okay.
worked. Most dance teachers cannot afford a studio in Santa Barbara,
Yeah,
so
I
they
can
are,
imagine. Yeah.
you know, because you need huge amounts of space. That's a dream of mine, of course, but I don't know if it'll ever come. We'll see. But I'm a mobile teacher, like a lot of teachers. I go from one studio to the next and teach, and I go to people's homes
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So it's normally it would be in person, either at their
in a
home
home
or
or in a studio, and that's
right,
this. And also, I work at Santa Barbara City College in the extension program, teaching beginning classes there. That shut down immediately last year.
right. And and you were mentioning that you had to do a lot on Zoom. And I've spoken with other dancers and choreographers about how tricky it is and challenging to use Zoom. And how was that for you, especially with keeping time and all that stuff and dealing with the internet? How was that process?
It had its moments. I mean, it was a salvation financially, but I certainly did not like teaching beginning classes because you can't correct dancers. So dance, is a three-dimensional art form. You have to be right there behind the body, moving it around and helping people feel from the subjectively what you're doing with different body parts. Like, okay, now lift from the elbow, don't lift from the shoulder or the hand. Things like that. You can say it, but it's hard to experience it without a body there right next to you doing it.
Helping you
That's
learn
number
the
one.
moves.
Yeah. And then number two, dance requires space. You have to move around. And I have this tiny little room, and so do everybody, all my students. So that I wouldn't want to take those students and put them on stage right away because they need a lot more work
Yeah.
after Zoom.
Yeah, and be able to actually work in a real space for sure. Now, what is it that you're hoping the audience takes away from the piece once they've seen it? When they leave the theater, what are you hoping they take away from the whole thing?
Well, the purpose of the piece that I'm presenting is to uh, show the world the evolution of the art and the different geographies, because belly dance is not just an Egyptian art, it's Turkish, it's Lebanese, and it's American. So there are very distinct styles that have evolved over the last century, and they're all very much more complicated than they were even when I was a young dancer. It's the art form has expanded and grown the way most art and science does as you go through time. So I hope that the audience will see the various styles and think, wow, this is a lot more complicated than I thought, and that they like it.
Oh, very cool. Nice, nice, very good. And then I was checking out your website earlier before we went on, and you have some. Do you have some events coming up after the Reemerge Festival?
Well, yes, I'm co-hosting or co-managing Bash, which is an
Oh,
iconic event in Santa Barbara. Director and producer is Derek Curtis. I'm working with Jatila van der Veen and Roxana Bonderson, and we're helping him put Bash on this year. We're expanding it to be more of a world dance festival and still maintaining the hip hop and um, tango and ballroom styles, but expanding it. We're going to do it at Marjorie Luke in November. I have a show that I do every year at Soho in December called the Soho Recital for my school. And then I have a recital coming up in 3 weeks at Carpolis Museum upstairs on the 24th. And that's a school recital. So, yeah.
oh wow! So it's great to see that you have plans,
Yeah.
and hopefully the pandemic doesn't take a turn for the worse, and fingers crossed, and prayers that it keeps we keep heading in the right direction, and it's nice that we're in the yellow tier now. So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Um, but well, hopefully, all I'm hopeful that your plans will go through. For the rest of the year and on into the future. And I hope you wouldn't mind humoring me for a little bit. I was hoping to ask you some random questions, what I call random questions, and just to get to know you in a way other than through dance. Would you mind if I put you on the spot for a little bit?
Be my guest.
And I've done this with everybody else too, so everyone's had to,
Suffer through it.
exactly, exactly.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, good. So the first random question that I have is, what is your favorite comfort food? If you had to just pick one, what would be your favorite comfort food?
Artichokes.
Oh, artichokes. Ooh, like like yeah, yeah. I love
Cook and then
artichokes.
you eat the leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Not raw.
No, no, no.
Oh my gosh! Now that you say that, I might have to go get some artichokes. I haven't had artichokes in a long time.
Let me give you my sauce. It's really good.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, exchange recipes afterwards. That would be great. Yeah, artichokes are that's a great comfort food. And so, what's your most treasured or prized possession? If you had to pick just one,
Oh,
I'm sure there's many.
well, not too many. I don't, as an artist, I don't have a lot of stuff, but the thing that I love the most, I think, is a little um, bookshelf that my son made for me when he was learning to be a carpenter. And the first, like thing he did was, thing he completed was this little shelf. It was just so sweet. He was 18 and I just love it.
Oh, and you still have it today?
Yeah, I put all my little icons and my spiritual and religious figures on it. It's very small, but so I can take it anywhere.
Uh-huh.
But it always reminds me of him.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's very cool. I like that. And let's see here. And then my next question. Well, okay, who's your favorite fictional character? And it could be a character in literature or movies, television. If you had to pick just one, who would be your favorite fictional character?
I'd say Sherlock Holmes
Oh,
because
somebody else said Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
well, I love him because I wanted to be a detective when I was a child. I mean, I
Okay.
think it was the Nancy Drew books, but I really, really love mysteries. And he's a very exotic and eccentric character, and so am I.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
I can relate to that. And he kind of lives life on his own terms. So do I.
Oh
obviously.
yeah,
So those are the three things that attract me to him, and I cannot get enough of Sherlock Holmes books and movies. And
yeah. Do you have a favorite actor who's portrayed Sherlock Holmes?
yes, um, I think my favorite at first, of course, it was Basil Rathbone,
Yeah.
but I loved the rendition that was done by the British company, and I don't remember it, and I cannot remember his name either, because it's such a strange name. But he's a well-known actor, a British actor right now, and his last name is very strange. Do you know who I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
I know who you're talking about, and I can't think of his name either. But
I think they did a series with him, and it was like there was only 4 episodes or something, but it was mind-boggling. They sped up a lot of the things he did and showed the internal machinations of his mind while he was working.
oh,
I just thought that was mind-boggling to have the two instead of
yeah,
the just the external.
right, right. And I think what was the American version of that called Elementary? Is it
There
the
was
same?
a TV series, yeah, and I didn't like that as much, but I also loved the two films that
Yeah.
what's his name did.
Oh, Robert Downey.
Yep,
Or yeah,
Robert Downing did a great job. He did a great job as, as Sherlock Holmes too.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and of course you can't beat Basil Rathbone.
And of course, that would be my third choice.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, that's great. Well, Alexandra, we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today. But before we go, is there any information you want to put out, any 411, how people can find you, social media, all that good stuff that you want to put out before we go?
I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I don't do a lot of Instagram, but I do have a Facebook page and I have my website. And I just want to say I finished my first screenplay and
Oh, nice. That you've written?
I'm going to put that on my Facebook page pretty soon. But anyway, I'm working on that. And hopefully it'll become a movie, Muscovado, about the slave rebellion on St. John, Virgin Islands, which is
Oh,
where I'm from. And that's all.
well, good luck with that, and hopefully that will uh, come to fruition. That sounds great.
Thank you.
And and again, you can find Alexandra on her website, alexandraking.com. That's Alexandra King, King.com. Alexandraking.com is her website. And for information and tickets to the Reemerge Dance Festival, you can log on to centerstagetheater.org. That's centerstagetheater.org. And you can reserve your tickets online there. And you can also click on the blog tab on the Center Stage website and check out all the information about the Dance Festival, all the various performers and studios that are presenting this year, and learn more about them. Again, that's all on centerstagetheater.org. And if you're curious what I'm up to, you can follow me all over social media, Jim on the Air. That's Jim on the Air on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter. It has to be different for some reason. It's Jim on the Radio, but only because I'm lazy and I haven't changed it yet. But Jim on the Air, and then the podcast is available on several platforms. Jim on the Air on Apple Podcast, Anchor.fm, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, etc. And you can find the podcast there as well. And Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us today, and continued success with all the dancing. And don't break a leg. I won't say that because we don't want dancers to do that. But continued success with all your endeavors.
Thanks so much, Jim. Great talking to you.
And you as well. And everybody, thank you so much for watching or listening. And we'll catch you next time. Bye bye, everybody.